Test.
One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. One, two, one, two, one, two. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay.
So friends, we're missing the beginning of the game. Who's in town to be my surrogate at the game and give me
Is run on.
The Rules
We
Committee
get
will
more-
come to,
No.
the Rules Committee will come to
talking
order.
about the game.
The Rules Committee will come to order. We are meeting on a resolution waiving a requirement of Clause 6A of Rule 13 with respect to consideration of certain resolutions reported from the Committee on Rules. I now turn to the ranking, I now turn to the ranking member, Mr. Cole, for any comments that he would like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, we're meeting for really no reason at all. Look, I might be able to understand the need for flexibility on the last week of session, but give me a break. We considered 3 rules already on the floor this week. And now the majority has decided out of nowhere, the night before our last day in session, to yank members back to the Rules Committee to report a blanket same-day rule on whatever you want. What's so urgent? This is a measure, Mr. Chairman, you repeatedly and vehemently and venomously referred to as martial law during your time as ranking member. But to add icing to the proverbial cake, today's motion comes just 9 days after the majority allowed same-day authority to expire. Before July 19th, same-day authority had been in place for over 790 days. For over 790 days, over 2 years, the majority granted itself same-day authority that you so frequently decried as martial law when you were in the minority. And today, just 9 days after allowing that procedure to expire and allowing the House to begin taking baby steps toward regular order, we are here once again to impose this procedure on the House. No way to run a railroad, Mr. Chairman. In recent days, we had hopes that we might begin to return to normalcy, but instead, we see more of the same. We see these same bad habits and bad procedures over and over again. Keeping the House on lockdown for years on end and using that authority to block Republican ideas from being considered on the floor. Using proxy voting to preserve Democrats' razor-thin majority in the House. Using en bloc authority to conveniently package and vote down Republican amendments all at once, writing massive bills written behind closed doors in the Speaker's office, and using same-day authority to bring them to us with an hour to read. And now this, changing the procedures of the House to once again grant yourselves the same martial law authority you just allowed to expire, when you could have included this in any rule we considered earlier this week. I'm genuinely shocked, Mr. Chairman. The way the Speaker is running the place makes it seem like she's been running it for 3 days, not 3.5 years. It's hardly regular order. This is hardly a democracy, and this is hardly the way to run the House of Representatives. With that, I yield back.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the gentleman's comments. I will just point out for the record, this is for 1 day. I should also say that the rule, we had some complaints from people today, both sides of the aisle, as a matter of fact, about the rule today that dealt with, that may have interrupted or prevented people from moving bills on the consensus calendar. So this rule strikes the provision from the previous rule that paused the clock for the consensus measure, but it makes sure that these measures don't ripen before the House comes back in session in September, and committees have a chance, if they want to mark them up, and if they don't, then these bills go to the floor. In any event, I don't think that the bills that potentially may be up tomorrow are things that have been around for a while, and they're public safety bills, and so people have had a chance to see them. You know, whether they come up or not remains to be seen, but we're just doing this just in case. And at this time, the chair will entertain a motion from the gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Torres.
Well, I've got some questions I'd like to pose, if I may.
Oh, sure.
Before we actually move to that. Mr. Chairman, can you explain to me why we've had 3 rules on the floor this week, and we're just now on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. deciding you need this extraordinary authority?
Because some of the legislation, there's a lot of important pieces of legislation that have yet to be considered, and if we can get them done before we recess for August, it's worth doing. They're public safety bills.
Okay, do you expect that this authority would be used to consider gun-related legislation?
Potentially, yes. We were originally going to meet early in the week on that gun-related legislation.
When will we be meeting on this legislation?
I can't tell the gentleman yet.
Okay, will there be any changes to the legislation as previously noticed?
I don't, on the gun legislation or on the other public
Any
safety
of
legislation? There may be some changes, but we will make the gentleman aware of those.
Do you expect to give members more than an hour notice that you provided in this case?
We will, if you want more than an hour's notice, we will try to accommodate you.
Okay, and do we expect to use this authority to consider any other measures?
I don't expect that to be the case.
And this is blanket same day, correct?
Correct.
So there's no limit to how many measures you could jam into it on the schedule if you chose to?
That is, the gentleman technically is correct, but I'm assuring the gentleman that that will not be the case.
And should members of the House expect to be in session beyond tomorrow?
I sure as hell hope not.
Not quite the answer I'd hope to hear.
I don't believe we will be, but I can't, I'm not, I think, we're doing this for one day, so if we were going to be in session beyond, we'd have to, we might have to, we would obviously have to meet again and figure out what the next day's schedule would be like, but I anticipate us getting out of here tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
All right, so at this time, the chair will entertain a motion from the gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Torres.
Mr. Chairman, I move committee grant a rule that waives the requirement of Clause 6A of Rule 13 requiring a 2/3 vote to consider a report from the Committee on Rules on the same day it is presented to the House with respect to any resolution reported through the legislative day of July 29, 2022. The rule provides that Section 7 of House Resolution 1289 shall have no force or effect, and that Clause 7A1 of Rule 15 shall not apply through the legislative day of Friday, September 16, 2022.
You heard the motion from the gentleman from California. Is there any amendment or discussion? Hearing none, the vote is on the motion from the gentleman from California. Those in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed say no. No.
No.
Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Recorded vote has been requested. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Torres.
Aye.
Mrs. Torres, aye. Mr. Perlmutter. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin, aye. Ms. Scanlon.
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Morelli. Mr. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
Mr. DeSaulnier, aye. Ms. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Ross, aye. Mr. Neguse.
Aye.
Mr. Neguse, aye. Mr. Cole. No. Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Burgess.
Burgess votes no.
Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Rushenthaler. Mr. Rushenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach.
No.
Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk report the total.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
And the motion is agreed to. I will carry it for us.
Well, we will match you with our #1 workhorse, Mr.
Oh, my goodness. Back by popular demand. Anyway, I appreciate everybody being here, and I think this will be on the floor tomorrow at 9. Yeah, McGovern's managing it, and Reschenthal is managing it. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.